Greetings to everybody who joins us today. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform starts its operation. It's year 9 of the war and it's day 292 of the heroic resistance of Ukrainian people. Today we celebrate the day of the land forces, of the armed forces of Ukraine, and on behalf of all of our team we want to thank you. And our schedule for today is as follows. At 13 o'clock, joining us online will be Vitaly Kim, the military governor of Mykolaiv region. At 13:30, joining us online will be Ivan Fedorov, mayor of Melitopol, and we will be talking about the situation in Melitopol. And right now, joining us online is Serhii Khlan, the deputy of Kherson Oblast Council. Hello, Mr. Serhii. Hello. Kherson region is Ukraine. We are from Ukraine, and glory to Ukraine. Mr. Serhii, we know that the occupiers incessantly keep inflicting strikes in different facilities in Kherson region, and the city of Kherson itself. Was the situation as of now? Really, the situation is quite complicated. There were 57 shellings within the last day. That one person was injured since the very morning. Today we're hearing the sounds of explosions. There is smoke above the city of Kherson. We don't know still what was the facility that was damaged, but we know that the occupiers keep hitting the city chaotically. Residential areas, private buildings, critical infrastructure, industrial facilities. Last week the occupiers were hitting the power infrastructure, but thanks to the heroic work of our power technicians, the city is supplied with electric power and water supply. Now the works are in progress with re-establishing heating supply, and part of the population who are equipped with the private heating have heating in their houses, but some small boiler rooms were only reconnected to the heat supply after demining, because during their withdrawal from the city the occupiers mined all the installations of critical infrastructure very densely. Kherson thermal power plant was recently demined and reconnected to the grid, and now it supplies heat to a large part of the citizens of Kherson. The city mitigates that critical damage which was left by the occupiers as they retreated, but their vile bombardments happening on a daily and a nightly basis. We can say that they're going on a 24/7. The city is being bombarded and all the suburbs and adjacent areas, and in this view the situation is quite jeopardized and complicated. Mr. Serhii, what can we say about the recent damage, destructions inflicted recently by the occupiers? What we can say that the occupiers bombarded hospitals, the children's department, and the maternity home, and that there was another strike on Berislav Regional Hospital, and all those facilities were seriously damaged. There is more damage of the critical infrastructure and obviously apartment blocks and other residential areas. The works are currently in progress on mitigation of the damage, on relocation of the people, because where the dwellings become such that people find it impossible to live there, we have to arrange evacuation for everybody. The evacuation is organized from the right bank of Kherson and of Kherson region and the city of Kherson itself. Anybody who signs up at the website of the military administration or just comes in person to the central railway station 4 hours before departure of the train to Khmelnytsk. Everybody who has a desire to evacuate may use that service. Mr. Serhii, there was information about Arbatska Spit, that there is a concentration of Russian military over there. Do you know about the situation there, and what's the situation in Skadovsk, Oleshki, Kakhovka, Nova Kakhovka? What's going on there? Yes, the occupied part of the left bank of Kherson region, it suffers the activities of the occupiers, and the Arbatska Spit is currently the militarized zone, Russia's militarized zone. They created a military polygon there. The newly mobilized Russian military arrived there. They group and organize and being forwarded in different directions to both Zaporizhia area and Kherson region as well. There are rotations from the front lines. So Arbatska Spit and all the recreation facilities are mostly transformed into military bases for those of the Russian military personnel who are newly mobilized and rotating. In Arbatska Spit, the occupiers arranged the helicopter aprons, and there was another training, as they called it. They just started shooting the red book birds in Arbatska Spit. Arbatska Spit was always area with good ecology, and the birds who were migrating on a seasonal basis, I mean white swans who are migrating, so the occupiers, just for fun, they started shooting at those white swans who are a part of the Red Book of Ukraine. In Kherson, the people report that the occupiers were just riding around the streets and shooting guns. This is how they have fun in occupied territories. In Skadovsk, there are also military bases of the Russians deployed. They brought it from the bank of Dnipro into the depth of Kherson region, and in the banks in Kakhovka and Nova Kakhovka, Oleshka, Gola Pristan, the occupiers left mostly the observation posts in small numbers. They are in small numbers, but they still exist, and they report all the movements across Dnipro, and they send signals to their main forces to come closer to the banks of Dnipro. And along the banks there are also mobile artillery teams who bombard the right bank of Kherson region. The occupiers changed their tactics. Well, I would rather say not even changed, but they reverted to their criminal tactics of bombardment of the residential areas of the right bank of Kherson region. For example, yesterday they were bombarding Berislav and the right bank of Kherson region with MLRS located right in the middle of the residential areas, in between the apartment buildings, to get themselves covered with the live shield with residential infrastructure, so that our armed forces could not respond in a relevant manner. And this is the way they do it in Gola Pristan, bombarding Kherson across Dnipro river, so they bombarded from the residential areas. What about our people who are currently in occupation in the left bank? What's the situation with critical infrastructure, with mobile communication? Do they have option to leave to the areas controlled by Ukrainian government? Well, there's almost no communication. Sometimes it emerges, and we can set up some communication to talk to them. Even internet pops up every once in a while, but the situation with internet and cell communication is not critical, but they're almost absent. As to the security, the occupiers are on another phase or another wave of pillages. This is what's happening in Nova Kakhovka and Kakhovka. The people report about total maraudery happening in those dwellings which were left by people. So Nova Kakhovka is almost empty. In Kakhovka, actually, there are some residents who remain there, and but in Nova Kakhovka, the occupiers enter the buildings and they pillage, they steal almost everything that people left in their homes, because almost everybody left Nova Kakhovka, but now it's pretty difficult to leave the Kherson region, I mean the left bank, because the occupiers implemented the procedure of new badges, new permits for the people on the occupied territories to move around. People have to live through Zaporizhia region through Vasilievka. People keep living, but still in very small numbers. We have information that people can leave the left bank of Kherson region through Crimea and then come back to Ukraine through Baltic countries, but we have to understand that this is quite a risky and lengthy way, because the majority of this way should be on the part of this way, people should be going through occupied Crimea and Russian Federation, so people suffer oppressions from Russians and while crossing the borders as well. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please. Olga Opanasenko, Ukrinform, good afternoon. Now many humanitarian cargo is being delivered to Kherson region from other parts of Ukraine and from abroad, from different civil organizations. Do you have any information of what's missing? What kind of humanitarian help, humanitarian aid is missing for the residents of the deoccupied areas? Yes, a lot of humanitarian aid is coming from all regions to Ukraine, of Ukraine to Kherson, and the distribution of the humanitarian aid is well organized now, because if in the beginning it was only distributed in the central square of Kherson, now it's individual addressed humanitarian aid. It's not still perfect, but the system is being implemented. The humanitarian aid is being distributed across the districts of the city, and the humanitarian aid already reached the occupied communities of Kherson region, of the right bank of Kherson region. We have not only the city of Kherson itself, we have to understand that there is a large number of people who remained in the towns and villages of the right bank of Kherson region who still need help. What also requires help is the facilities of the critical infrastructure, I mean generators, and the military administration now provides the distribution of humanitarian wood and coal all across the occupied part of the Kherson region in the right bank of Dnipro. In the city of Kherson itself, the issue is complicated with the bread, but it's being solved, and the bread is being delivered to the city just as well as to the other towns and villages. We stabilized the situation with the medicines. There are addresses on the website of the military administration where the citizens of Kherson can come and get free medicines. The chain supermarkets such as ATB and Silpo are operating in Kherson. We observe lines of people there. There is a huge demand, but the lines are not as big as they were during the very beginning of the occupation. What kind of help is still needed? All kinds of aid are required, are in demand. There is no some specific kind of humanitarian aid that is required more than others. And we also still need help from other communities that keeps coming, such as ambulance vehicles, special vehicles for different technical services, because they were all that material was stolen by the occupiers as they were retreating from the right bank of Kherson region. Mr. Serhii, as to the crimes committed by the occupiers in the occupied territories, I know that this question is not maybe to you directly, but maybe you have the information about how many crimes like that were documented and how the work is arranged. Do people come to the police departments, and what do they report? What do people report to the police? Yes, the people report to the police, and there is a big demand in Kherson for punishing of the collaborationists. There were cases in Kochubey community, people detained 2 collaborationists who collaborated with the occupiers, and people report the crimes, and they provide evidences about the acts of collaboration. And in other cases, I mean other kinds of crimes committed by the Russians, we see the remnants of those crimes, the evidences of those crimes. We find torture sites, and we find cases of people killed right in their homes, or the illegal detention of people where the police departments were transformed into torture sites and detention sites, or some industrial facilities were transformed into detention sites, and we find more and more of those torture rooms, torture sites, and the national police documents the crimes, the war crimes of the Russians on a daily basis, and we will have it will all be promulgated soon, and we will report, we will deliver this information of the crimes committed by Russians to the world community soon. Thank you, Mr. Serhii, for joining us. Dear friends, I'm reminding you joining us was Serhii Khlan, Deputy of Kherson Regional Council, and at 1 o'clock joining us will be Vitaly Kim, the military governor of Mykolaiv region. Bear with us, and glory to Ukraine.